I know we say it all the time, right up my alley, but this is right up my alley.
You have quite a large alley.
I do have a big bowling alley. Yes, I do. But today, what are your thoughts about the spirit world?
That's a lot.
It would.
What are my thoughts? I have a plethora of thoughts about the spirit world.
Okay, so then let me get a little bit more specific. Is spirit just in humanity?
I don't think so.
You don't?
I don't.
Oh, that's great. Tell me about that.
Well, no, let's hear it from the experts.
Oh,
you don't want to hear my opinion.
Fine, okay. My name is Will.
And I'm Karen.
And unlike Mulder and Scully,
we both want to believe.
So we've embarked on a journey of discovery.
We've talked to people deeply entrenched in the spiritual and metaphysical world.
We've thrown ourselves into weird and wonderful experiences. I even joined a coven of witches.
And wait, you joined a coven?
Yep, all in the interest of finding something.
Anything.
That will prove that there's something beyond this physical,
three-dimensional world we all live in.
This is the Skeptic Metaphysicians. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Skeptic Metaphysicians. Karen, this is going to be a fun one.
I know. I'm super excited.
Are you?
I am.
Do you know why?
No.
But you're still super excited.
I'm always excited to do these.
And that's the best thing about you, especially because you bring such enthusiasm and energy to the show. I really love having you as my co-host.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, well, I'm excited because it's the first time we've had two people on the show at the same time.
That's right.
And to make matters even better, it's not that they are the first two-person interview that we're doing, but the topic that we're going to be talking about is...
Well, no, let's hear it from the experts.
That's a good point. Let's bring them in. They are actually the experts in this because they have a spirit world center.
Ooh.
And they provide, I don't want to say training because it's not really training, although it is. It's kind of like a mentorship on a shamanic journey or path that I'm completely butchering. So I'm just going to introduce our guests, Eric and Lehova Lingen. Thank you guys so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you so much for having us. It's great to be here.
Very happy to be here. Thank you for having us.
First and foremost, in your estimation, what exactly is shamanism?
It's a very good question. Yeah, and as you're saying, we have the Spirit World Center, and we basically teach people through various modalities, shamanism being one of them, how to interact with the spirit world. And through mediumship and other ways, but shamanism is one of the main ones. And essentially what shamanism is really something universal. I like to describe it as the birthright of humanity. It's also important to make a clear distinction between shamanism and, let's say, Native American religion, because otherwise some weird appropriative things, cultural appropriation starts happening there. We're not talking about particular cultural practices. What we're talking about is this experience that is really open to anyone. Okay. And it's found throughout time and throughout cultures, right? It's like water. It can be poured into lots of different cups, lots of different glasses, right? And so it takes many different forms, but it's the same impulse that keeps it coming across. And ultimately what it is that humans have this power. They have this ability. They're born with it. Anyone can do it. And that is entering into trance. Trance work is essential to shamanism. And ultimately what happens there is that your rational brain, your ego and all that, it kind of shuts off. And you get to have an experience of what is normally being filtered out. It's very much like what Aldous Huxley was saying about the brain as a filter, right? That it filters out all these things, and under things like hallucinogens and this, it basically allows you to have an expanded awareness. Certain data is no longer being filtered. And there's many ways that shamans have entered into trance throughout the years. Of course, hallucinogens have been one of them. However, things like ordeals have been other ways, so fasting until the point of starvation, dancing around a fire for 3 or 4 days until you collapse, right? These are risky ways, okay? Extremely risky ways.
I know.
And ultimately what you're looking to do is cause a shift in your nervous system where suddenly you are, your brain is no longer filtering out these other realities. And drumming is, of course, one of the safest ways to get into that state, where basically at about 210 beats per minute, it just entrains your mind and enters you into that trance state where you can then experience these broader realities of consciousness around you. And it's not just humans who can enter into a trance, right? You can hypnotize a chicken, right? You basically take a chicken, put it on the ground, and with a piece of chalk, you draw a line slowly in front of its beak. That will leave the chicken hypnotized for like half an hour. They actually have competitions on this, right? So this is a neurological thing that's happening, but it opens up these spiritual vistas of experience. And this is why I say that's something that has been around forever, right? In the human experience. You have one of our earliest ancestors sitting around a fire, staring at the fire, listening to drumming. He trances out, and then suddenly he has experiences of the local spirits around him, the spiritual landscape. So that's really what shamanism is in a nutshell. And there's many ways in, from the hallucinogenic end, which we don't practice ourselves, but all the way to the kind of just listening to drumming and working with that modality to get in there.
Yes.
Is-
Sorry.
No, I was just going to ask if you can get in through breath work.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Holotropic breath work and that kind of thing, anything that causes that shift in mind. And you're always going to have a bit of a different flavor with different modalities, right? Breath work definitely gives you that super high on top of things, right? But it will get you into those altered states for sure. And this is one of those things where there's many ways that the spirit world can make itself shown to you, right? Because suddenly you have, and I guess we'll get to this when we talk about what the spirit world is, but you have this pure consciousness realm that's interacting with you in particular. And so there's, based on how you approach it and even, what's going on in your life and your own symbol sets, there's many different experiences that are on the table that you can have.
I'm chomping at the bit because one of the things that really has called to me over the course of my X amount of years looking into this stuff has been shamanic journeys. I identify very, very strongly with that for some reason, and I don't really know why, but I do. It speaks to me in a big way. So I've actually experienced a couple of things. I remember back in my young days when I was first looking into this stuff, like full moon drummings and things like that, where everyone would have a drum and you would lose your mind, right? Doing all kinds of dances and things. So my question, first and foremost, I have a lot of questions, but my very first question to you is, you mentioned that drumming is a way to get you into trance. Do I have to drum, or just listening to drumming, is that enough?
Listening to drumming is enough. It's the rhythm that carry kind of the waves and to your brain. And even just listening to earbuds, even if it's not the real drum, it is fine too. And from my experience, I know that some people, they prefer to listen to drum track. Other people, they need to drum for journeying so it's all over but yes, you can certainly be in a trance just with the sound of it.
That's good, because I can't multitask to save my life. So
Not
I
at
can't
all.
imagine trancing and drumming at the same time. I'd be like, well, I'd be waking up all the time.
Yes.
Does it have to be a certain rhythm or a certain pace?
I would say that, yes, the 210, I would say about 210
Beats per minute.
beats per minute.
It's actually called the Yucatan beat.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is that in the 20th century, there was a researcher who went down to a church in Mexico, and they tried to figure out, the parishioners at this church, they were entering into these strange ecstatic states, and they were, entering into trance, and they were, making vocalizations, and something was weird happening at this church. And the researchers found that there were parishioners who were banging on gourds at 210 beats per minute. And so they realized, okay, there's some kind of entrainment happening where at that rate, something very interesting is happening to the nervous system.
Yes. Now, of course, you can have other rhythm that will give you other experiences. And I found myself and you can drum there. This is what is fun with shamanism, is that you can be so creative. And so let's say sometimes I like to drum while standing and just adding movement to it and be kind of a dance drumming trance at the same time. And there will be part of my trance when it will be more slow. All the time it will be like going like crazy because I need to let go of things. So I need another rhythm to kind of shake it off. And then it will just go back to a regular standard 200 beat, 210 beat per minute. Yeah. So it can be all over the place.
And that's one of the things, is that there's various levels, if you will, because there's a lot of different things that can go on with shamanism, right? It's not just, yes, the transport part of it is a huge part, right? And that's where you're entering into these shamanic journeys. And just for your listeners, right? The shamanic journey is when you're in that trance state, you're able to send your consciousness off to the spirit world or elsewhere and have this kind of lucid dream-like experience where the spirit world interacts with you through symbols.
Yes. It is really like, yeah, it's good to explain the shamanic journey. It's really like a vivid dream, you know? And the feeling is, it's not just visualization. You have all the body sensation with you. You can, you know, feel the wind, the cold, the warm. You can smell, you can hear, taste, and see. And you might not have all the 5 senses activated necessarily. Some people feel more, some people see more. It's really, again, depending on who you are. But if you can try to integrate more senses, this is what is great. But you don't necessarily need a good vision to experience a journey. And one thing I would say is that the most important feeling is your heart. It's like, how do you kind of translate all these sensory that you receive into kind of a heart feeling? It's heart-based communication. And then you have kind of a sense. You cannot really put words on it, but it's a knowledge. And then you kind of interpret it. It's like when you have a vivid dream, right? You're living the dream. You're kind of, you're doing some step, but at the same time, you're carrying away by some forces that are just, you cannot explain them, but it's there. You're kind of carried away by them. And so you're just living the dream. And then it's just when you wake up that you start interpreting it. So this is why we say it's so important to put your mind aside. You know, it's a heart-based communication. You want to be like a hollow bond. You know, you're hollow inside. You let it pass through you and you just go inside your heart. Yes.
So just to touch on something you said a couple of minutes ago, you said you can change the beats if you need to get rid of more things. So is this journey, can it be used as a cleansing journey?
Yes, so totally. You can use a journey to cleanse. You can use the journey to do, you know, there's a lot of popular word like shadow work, child work, and like inner child work and so on. And we usually call it soul retrieval and power retrieval. So on a shamanic perspective, and I'm talking about the like a very vague core universal shamanism here, nothing specific, but something that is common in the community is that you would see that there are things that you can add to yourself or to your soul, or there are things that you can take off your soul that are like you need to take away from yourself. So when it is something you have to call back to you, like something missing, we call that a retrieval, like soul or power retrieval. And then when it is something that needs to go, we call it an extraction, something that needs to be extract from you. And it can be, it can go to a negative energy to, well, we like to work with like negative thoughts and negative feelings and so on, and our curse and etc. Now, if you go on what is to add, then it is what we call soul retrieval. This is the most difficult one. It is something that happen usually to someone when it has a very difficult event.
And in essence, one way to look at the soul, which is helpful, is to look at it as consciousness. It's that consciousness that you came into this reality with. And it's something that's very, very big in shamanism is this idea of soul retrieval. And the thing is, that implies you have to retrieve parts of your soul. And something that can happen is that when you go through a traumatic event, it's very possible to lose a piece of that consciousness. When you have a traumatic event, part of your consciousness, part of your soul basically takes one for the team, and it takes the lived experience of that event, and it basically departs. It leaves from your system there, and it goes off and hides in the spirit world or in this realm of consciousness. And so this, of course, helps the person go on in life because they don't have the felt experience of that trauma. Even if they have the memory of it, they don't have that felt experience, the memory of the felt experience. But at the same time, this can eventually lead to problems because you literally are missing pieces of your consciousness, pieces of your soul. And so a big part of the shamanic healing process is going and retrieving those bits of soul that have those memories and reintegrating them into your system. And by doing so, it can be very difficult because you have to face those memories again and experience it and make that piece of your consciousness feel comfortable coming back. That can be a lot of lifestyle changes. It can be a lot of things in that bargaining relationship that opens up there. But ultimately, it can heal you in a lot of ways, make you feel more powerful, make you feel more present and happier and all that. Because when you're missing those pieces of consciousness due to power loss, soul loss, you basically can also be open to a lot of attachments, a lot of entity attachments, energy attachments, because you basically have like little pockets in your consciousness, right? Think about a piece of paper that you've torn pieces out of, right? Well, now you have these little holes, right? And they're kind of like broken windows. And, so energies and entities, when they're, most of them, when they're passing by, they're benevolent. They're not going to jump in the window, right? Through this broken window.
Yeah.
And so, but, the negative ones, they'll take up residence in that room that they got in through the broken window in the house that is your soul. And that, of course, has a lot of negative things that can come from that. A lot of, you might just feel terrible one day because you've picked up kind of a negative energy, right? You go to an antique store and you pick up something that, had some energy stuck to it. And, the first thing that people tend to do in that situation is cleanse, right? You might go to a Reiki practitioner or a shamanic practitioner, and they do a cleansing on you, right? They might drum you, they might put their hands on you and send any of that gunk away. The problem is, though, that, this kind of evicts that energy or entity from that room, but the window's still broken, right? So they can come back right away. And so, in that kind of situation, you want to do kind of energetic sealing after you cleanse, and that's kind of like putting that plastic with tape up on a broken window, right? It's a temporary measure, though. It doesn't last forever. One of the strongest things in shamanic healing that you can do, though, is actually replace that window, and that's that kind of that soul healing. So yeah, there's a lot of soul retrieval and soul healing. So there's a lot of different things that you can do through the shamanic journey state. It really allows you to play with your consciousness. So you have your consciousness, you have your soul, you can send things away, you can add things, and you can really grow. You can really create transformational events in your life that just cause you to continually level up.
Yes. So soul healing is one of the things you can do, but you can also, learn to connect with the spirits of the land around you. So have a spiritual connection with nature as well. You can learn divination. You can also do what else? Ancestral healing as well. So you can heal yourself, but you can also connect with your ancestors and engage also in what they call psychopomp work, which is helping the dead to pass over.
Wow.
Yes.
You have said so much that I don't even know where to start. I'm taking all these notes here, and let's back up for a second, because we have so much to talk about, and there's no way that this is going to be the only interview that we do with you. This is impossible. We're halfway through, and we're not even close to.
I know, it's the introduction, is the menu.
All right. So going back and the soul retrieval process, interestingly enough, I am going through something similar on not a shamanic journey path, but on, psychotherapy kind of thing. And my statement has always been, I'm kind of sleepwalking through life. And I've identified certain things that happened when I was a kid, that seemed to be the root of these kinds of things. And in psychotherapy, you're trained to go back and face and actually feel the emotions and all that kind of stuff. So I would assume that the difference here is that in the shamanic journey, you are actually when you're in your trance, you're transported into it. So you're actually reliving the experience versus remembering the experiences. Am I close?
It is a possibility. One thing that I really want to say is that it's always the experience of how you will retrieve the soul is very unique to everyone. You might relive the entire experience completely. You might also just meet with your childhood self and just want to take it back with you and talk to it. It depends on people. And so, but that's one possibility. And yes, it can be very intense. But then, from what I saw is that it's never just that, the spirits or your guides, if you want, they never let you just with, let's say, okay, let's just relieve your trauma and then you're good to go. No. They will it's very ceremonial, very ritualistic. So, there's something that will happen before to kind of prepare you to that step. And then when let's say you relieve the space or you found back that piece of soul of yours, then there will be another ritual, usually something that will follow that will help you heal the soul, bringing back, and you will really feel it inside of you. And then it's not that all. I mean, that's just the first part. Then you have to do what we call the integration process, which is not just like the kind of soul integration, the spiritual part of it, but also in real life, in your life, day-to-day life. What are you going to do to make sure that this part of your soul is healing and you can kind of move on? Yes.
So this kind of process can be, to your point, really intense.
Oh, yeah.
So in the world of COVID, before COVID, I would assume that you might be able to help someone in person to go through the process, that kind of stuff. I'm assuming that now, most of the stuff you do is the way we're talking now, right? Virtually. So how dangerous is it to do things like this on your own? Can you get stuck? Or do you really need to have someone next to you while you're doing it to make sure that they can help you through it?
This is something that can be problematic if you go it alone. And so, for instance, I put out meditation tracks, but I don't put out meditation tracks for soul retrieval, let's say, because I would need and want to be able to talk to you after you've gone through that experience, to be able to integrate what's happened to you. And so, yeah, if you're going through the soul healing process, you definitely want to have someone who has been there before, who can talk you through it and talk after it. And of course, one approach that we have personally is that soul healing can be a very long process, right? It's not like you go to the shamanic practitioner once and then they do something and then suddenly you're cured forever. It's very much something that requires lifestyle change. It requires you to actually do the work and integrate that piece of you when it returns. And so actually at this point, we actually only teach people how to do it for themselves after a lot of training, right? So it's kind of like, okay, we'll give you 6 months of training, then you're ready to start on soul healing for yourself. But then we are here in that mentorship capacity to talk you through it afterwards, right? So you definitely want to have a mentor around, but at the same time, then it is a thing that is deeply personal and that you kind of want to work through in your own personal relationship with the spirits, but you definitely want a guide who can talk you through it.
A word from friends of our show.
Chaos is universal. We all have chaos. Whether it's big or small or somewhere in between, we might as well share it, the chaos of life, so we can feel heard, validated, maybe make someone laugh, or just know we're not alone in all the chaos. I'm Jocelyn, host of Keeping Up with Chaos podcast, where you'll find connections, conversations, and of course, shared chaos. We bring on all different kinds of interesting guests and friends of ours from all different places, living different lives, but sharing their stories here with you. Because why not? We all have a story to share, and maybe a little bit of chaos too. So let's get that conversation started. Join Keeping Up with Chaos podcast every Wednesday at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Find us on most podcast apps like Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Keeping Up with Chaos podcast. We hope you join us. Cheers.
And now back to the Skeptic Metaphysicians.
You said earlier that this is something that everyone can do, or that's accessible to everyone. Does it work for everyone? Because, like some people go to get hypnotized and it works. Like the one guy's acting like a chicken and the other person didn't feel anything. I mean, is there a situation where it wouldn't work for someone?
I think that there's a lot of different type of people, and this is why there's different type of tools to get in trance. Like shamanic journeying might not be for everyone. It's one way to connect with the spirits. But, you can do trance posture, you can do soul singing, you can do breath work, you can do ecstatic dance, you can, do rituals, some people prefer to work with the dreams because they are very, very good with dreams, or different type of instrument. Drums is one of them, but there's other instrument that works too, like rattles or the little harp. There's a little
jaw harp.
Jaw harps. Yeah, thank you. And more than that. So this is why there are different ways to get into a trance for different people.
Yeah, it's a curious thing. Different temperaments and talents require different modalities for getting in there, right? And this is something that we find, especially a bit of a difference between men and women in interacting with this. If you tend to be more, I always get these backwards, but left-brained. If you kind of are more left-brained and logical and mathematical and all this, you might find a bit of difficulty getting into that shamanic state just because you might be getting in your own way, right? In that, as Laura was saying, it's essential to basically be like a hollowed out bone. Just allow the experience to come through you. And then, if you're going to be, as the name of the show, skeptical, save it for after, right? Have that pure experience, gather that data, and then apply your skeptical mind after, right? Because if you're applying that left-brained mind to it as you're having that experience, you're going to get in your own way, right? And this is why right-brained people who are more artistic and more intuitive, they find it a bit easier. And this is why at the center, I'm that left brain type, right? I've definitely had to train myself to be better at shamanic journeying. But at the same time, for me and for people like me, that's why I tend to teach more what we call kind of spirit craft, or kind of more the ceremonial way, almost like a druid, of working with the local spirits of the land through this kind of contractual, ceremonial style of working based on meditation and working with the landscape. So there's various ways in, right? But ultimately, you're doing a lot of the same things through these different directions.
You bring up a really good point, because on your site, when you touched on it a little bit about the fact that you are really truly against appropriating anything. And the difference is not in adopting other people's rituals and dances and things like that, but rather to create your own based on your own experiences. And it makes sense. I have a note here to ask, but Karen so wonderfully asked the question, what if you can't, clear your mind enough to happen? And you answered that. You have different ways of doing that, which is great. But then it leads us into probably the biggest question that I have, because when I was a young man, I was training with Native Americans in their way of doing things. And in their thought process, everything, which is why I introduced the show the way I did, everything has a spirit. It's not just you, me, the other person. Everything has a spirit, and it's getting in touch with that spirit through ritual that actually makes a difference in your life. Is that similar to the things that you are teaching?
Absolutely. It's one of these things where I don't like to push any dogma on my students or on anyone else. And so I always say, okay, treat what I say as a working hypothesis, and then do the work, right? Do the shamanic journeying, do the ceremonies, that you find yourself, and see what happens, right? And then, take that working hypothesis that I gave you and see if it works for you, see if it matches your experience of things. But that working hypothesis that I always start off people with, which definitely is what Laura and I have found through our practice, is this animus worldview. Absolutely. That we live in this world that is ensouled, right? And this is, we have a bit of a map of the spirit world, a map of reality that kind of lays things out. And that is, you can look at the physical world as this realm of time and space, and you have consciousness, but it's embodied, right? It's embodied within matter, right? You don't really have consciousness floating around, right? It's all embodied. And then you have what we call the spirit world. And that's kind of where we come from. But it's this place without time and space of just pure consciousness, pure infinite consciousness. And so then you have the interaction between us and it, right? So when you go on a shamanic journey, you are basically shutting yourself off from the physical and allowing your consciousness to go and engage with this kind of pure consciousness realm. And you're having this experience that's basically the personalized to you, right? It's able to look into, and you're not getting something that's literally true. You are getting something, this kind of lucid dream that is being personalized. They're looking inside of you. They're seeing what your symbols and what your symbol sets is and what your personal spiritual language is. And it's giving you an experience that is comprehensible to you, right? And so that is kind of these two realms. And then, of course, you have kind of this area where they intermix, right? So if you have a Venn diagram, you have the physical world on one side, you have the spirit world on the other. And then the area where, in a Venn diagram, that area where they intersect, it shares qualities of both, right? And so you have the physical and the spirit world. Where they intersect is something that we call the liminal. And, if you interview any kind of pagans or Wiccans or witches, they'll talk about seeing across the veil, seeing into the veil, right? And this is very much this kind of parallel existence that exists alongside us, in which you have pure consciousness, like in the spirit world, interacting and existing amongst physical matter and time and space, right? And so this is, the realm of ghosts and all this. And so, and nature spirits of the land. And so when you are entering into trance, yes, you can see into the spirit world itself, but then you can also see just across into this realm of consciousness that's much closer to us, and it is existing in relation to time and space. So I guess what I'm getting at here is we live in a very animated environment. I like to express that we live in the midst of a spiritual ecosystem. You just can't see it. And it's just like any other ecosystem out there, full of things that are benign, your deer, your rabbits, your trees, your mushrooms and all this. But then there's, the things that are, predatory and parasitic. And, we live in a very amazing ecosystem. And with shamanism, you can learn to navigate that spiritual ecosystem, interact with it in a lot of different ways. But by interacting with that ecosystem, you very much realize that everything has some consciousness to it. That, in fact, consciousness is primary. And this physical reality really is just kind of this hallucination being created for consciousness to play out narratives and to tell stories and to have experiences. And so, absolutely, you go out there, you look at a rock, that rock has consciousness in it. A tree, a mountain, a galaxy. There's all these different levels of consciousness, the same way that a cell in your body is its own living being. It's conscious to a degree, but then you have the consciousness of the entire body in you, and you're a cell in the galaxy, right? And it has its own consciousness. So there's all these various levels. And I think that's one of the exciting things you find when you start working with the shamanic path.
There's two things. First, I think my daughter would disagree that mushrooms are benign. She's not a fan.
Oh, no, she does not like mushrooms.
Not a fan. And secondly, the only way that I have found for me to wrap my head around all the things you're saying right now is by using quantum mechanics, right? Because the scientist in me is going, no way in hell is this rock conscious. Sorry, no way. It's just not possible. As a scientist defines consciousness, it is not possible. But with the advent of quantum mechanics, we now find that there are so many things that we thought were not possible that we're finding to be not only quite possible, but real. That, I guess, is my disclaimer for everyone who's listening in. That's how I can just go, okay, next question, right? Because otherwise I'd be like, no. No, you just said a lot that I can't wrap my head around, but I do appreciate what you're saying. You touched on something that sparked my memory when I was looking into you. You do have a background in nature-based religions like Wicca, Druidism, that kind of stuff. So what actually made you decide to follow a shamanic path? Like they say people get called to this path. How did that happen for you?
Well, for me, I think I'll tell my side of this, which is less interesting, and then Laova can tell hers.
It always is that way, isn't it?
Yeah. So I suppose it started when I was 12 years old, right? I went on a trip to England, and the last day we went on a tour of all the sacred sites, things like Aberbury Henge, Stonehenge, Glastonbury Tor. And when I got back to Canada, I was absolutely fascinated. I was the 12-year-old kid who was hanging out at the New Age section of the bookstores. And that introduced me to things like Druidry, and then that got me into Celtic shamanism, and then that was a gateway drug to everything else, right? Wicca, the occult, everything. And that led me to a lot of spiritual seeking. And, it's something that when I was like 18, I kind of fell away from because I went off to university and okay, I discovered things other than spiritual seeking, right? And then I eventually came back to it. And I suppose in my early 20s, I had, the dream job, dream career in Toronto. And I just started to think that there was some emptiness there. And so I left that job and basically just went on this spiritual quest, right? Where I was like, okay, I know about all these systems. I just want to delve as deep as I can into them, find what's universal, what's shared, and see what the truth is, right? And that, of course, led me to get deeper and deeper into nature spirituality. And, I was practicing a lot of things in the background, bit of shamanism here and there. But then through the miracle of online dating, I met Laova, and she had been a shamanic practitioner for quite some time. And she got me deeply into that after we met.
Yes, we're really like the left and right brain. It's really like this. Oh, I read all the books, a walking library. I am just like experiencing stuff and go with the flow type of person.
That's the thing. I'd read all the books and not had any real kind of paranormal experiences other than some synchronicities. She was having all the paranormal experiences and just going with an intuitive approach, right?
Which I think is going to be our second part of the interview is the paranormal experiences, because we haven't even touched on that. When I looked into your stuff, all the paranormal experiences that you guys have had, and you actually consult in that side of things, and we haven't even touched on it yet. So part 2 to come, and it will be all about the paranormal. But I'm so sorry.
Oh, no problem. Yes, I'm kind of a paranormal magnet. I kind of attract that kind of stuff. But so if I go short, since I was a child, I grew up in a haunted house. My sister was seeing ghosts. We had weird experiences there. It was a 130 years old house, in the countryside. I was raised Christian, Catholic. So what we would do is just pray God and pray for the best, hope for the best. It was working. Then, I was a teenager. I grew up and I forgot about that stuff. It was just kind of spooky story I would tell around a fire with a beer with my friends, And for me, when I was about 17, I entered a relationship. Was very, very toxic. I was very broken. For 4 years, it was not a good idea. And I left. I finished my life. But when I left, I felt like I was in 1,000 pieces. I felt so terrible. And I knew I had to find back myself and to build myself back. And this is what put me on the spiritual path. So starting, kind of reading self-help book and starting meditation. And at the time I was supposed to go to school, but I didn't go for, reason with that relationship. But then I decided to go to art school, just take my life back for myself. And as I do meditation, I start having paranormal experience again that I cannot explain. And I'm like, what is going on? I don't know. And there was a point where I asked 2 of my friends in the same day. I said, do you know a medium? I didn't even know about shamanism. I said, do you know a medium? I need to talk to someone that knows about spirits because something's happening with me. And they both say, I don't know a medium, but I know a shaman. It was not the same person, but I decided to go see one lady very, very adorable Native American. And she asked me, do you have Native blood? I said, well, my grandmother was Native. And she said, okay, I'm going to help you. And so she sat there for like 10 minutes. She closed her eyes. She didn't know me. And she was able to say the next 6 months of my life like that. Then it happened. I mean, it was not fun. I mean, it was quite something. So you have a difficult autumn. You will have, but then she said, I see you working with children. And she said, you're overdue to work with the spirits. And she was like kind of pointing at me. And I'm like, okay. And so she helped me a lot during the summertime. And then the fall arrived and my apartment went on fire. Before having the center with Eric, my main occupation was professional visual artist. And 5 contract with schools and art centers and art gallery to teach children.
Which came out of the blue. Like you'd never done that.
No. It was like one after the other, boom, boom, boom. In a month, I had 5 contracts. And then,
all working with kids.
Working with kids. I think I was teaching like 500 kids. It was just like,
wow.
Yeah. And so after that, I mean, I was in another relationship. I left and everything just started. My life turned around in the 6 months she was talking about. And I realized looking back, I was like, wow, she really, really said my life. This is powerful. She closed her eyes for 10 minutes and she was able to say all of this. I'm like, I really need to be serious about that. And this is how it was my confirmation event that I knew that shamanism is just so magical and powerful. And I just wanted to be in. So I started to delve into the practice.
A bit of a disclaimer. If you start seriously practicing shamanism and you invite the spirits, and the spirits, when we talk about them, we're talking about ancestors, we're talking about things like guardian spirits and protector spirits and all that. When you start working with them, they will help transform your life. And so if you have a lot of patterns that you need to slag off and get rid of, they'll help you transform. And it might happen in fast, striking and startling ways, but they'll help you transform. That's for sure.
Wow.
Gosh, I know that you help people go on this shamanic journey, on this path. I know that you have some virtual offerings that you do, and you can help people from across the world, really, right? So how can someone reach out to you if they're looking to either get on the path or looking for some help from someone like you?
Well, we have the spiritworldcenter.com. That's just spiritworldcenter.com. And that's where you'll find the majority of our stuff. We have our apprenticeship programs listed on there and our various mentorship programs in shamanism and spirit craft. And then we also have a podcast where we talk about these things and basically do Q&As for our students, and that's publicly available. We also do some good interviews there. We have a YouTube channel. That's the Spirit World Center on YouTube. The podcast it's not a very inventive name, but it's the Spirit World Center podcast, and that's available on all major podcast apps. We also have an Instagram account. That's Spirit_World_Center. And those are the main places to find us. And I encourage anyone who's having any kind of weird paranormal experiences or anything, reach out, because we can probably, say a few things that might help you out and give you a couple of practices that might be of help. And we're very approachable, and there's many ways of contacting us through there.
Okay, well, we are going to put all of those links directly on our website. So if you just go to skepticmetaphysician.com and go to their episode page, you can see all those links directly there. You can reach out to them specifically, directly, one-stop shop right at that site.
And please do reach out to them, because they are so informative and just lovely people, and they're going to make you feel so comfortable while they're helping you on your journey.
Yeah, no, this has definitely been an incredible conversation, and I just can't believe it's already over really quickly. I know that we are way short on time, but I've got to really make sure we hammer this point down. If you could narrow everything down that we just talked about into one fell swoop, what are the best benefits that shamanism provides, and how can it help in someone's life?
One thing that you find with shamanism is that it is like a reunion. you have all these spiritual beings who are around you, from a guardian spirit to all these beings who are empowering you to your ancestors. And a wonderful part about shamanism is waking up to that relationship, to these beings that are all around you, and then being able to work with those beings to solve practical issues in your life, whether it's soul loss or whether it's just cleansing some spirit that you picked up in a used bookstore, to, trying to bring some positivity and luck into your life. There are just so many ways that they can help, and it really is this homecoming, this reunion with beings who love and care about you, and they're around you right now anyways, but you can learn to work with them directly.
Yes, I would say it's all about feeling like you're getting things back to you, all the gifts maybe you feel you've lost throughout the life or that you discover, but also letting go, creating boundaries, healthy boundaries, to gain your power, to stay in your power in life, and in a very meaningful way. And like with the nature, but with the human, and also with the spirit. So it has really like kind of all these dimensions to it.
Guys, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to come on the show and speak to us about shamanism and what you do, and sharing of yourself with our audience, because what you bring to the table is so huge and so important. It's another path that's out there for those that are seeking their way in life. Thank you once again for coming on.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been an absolute blast.
Yes, it was amazing. Thank you very much.
Before we go, I did want to share another great review that came into our show. Melissa Oatman from the United States rated us 5 stars, and she says, "Awesome podcast. I love your energy and the topics you cover. Everyone should check out this amazing podcast." I could not agree with you more, Melissa. Thank you so much for leaving us that wonderful review, and we'd love to hear from you. So visit us at skepticmetaphysician.com, where you can leave us a voicemail or an email directly. You may just hear your voice or your words on the show. And we're always looking for ways to improve the show. So if you have some feedback that you'd like to provide, good or bad, just let us know. We are happy to take any criticism that you feel we should know. Of course, reviews and ratings are a great way to evolve and grow the show, so we'd love it if you would take a minute and leave one of those as well. As you can see from Melissa's review, it doesn't have to take a lot or a long time. A couple of words saying what you feel about the show is all we really need. Well, that wraps it up for this episode of the Skeptic Metaphysicians. Listener, thank you for coming along on this journey of discovery with us again. Don't forget, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram under @SkepticMetaphysician. As always, if you know someone that would benefit from hearing the messages we've shared on the show or any of our others, I hope you'll consider sharing us with that person. It will help grow the show and may just help someone else come to terms with the fact that we're so much more than just this 3-dimensional body that we inhabit. Listening to this episode on the radio and miss anything? Not to worry. All of our shows, including this one, can be found on our site, skepticmetaphysician.com. Don't forget that you can become a member of the Skeptic Metaphysician community for free there and enjoy the added benefits of discounts for services from some of our past guests, as well as a chance to never miss a show or an announcement immediately once it's been published. We hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as we have. That's all for now. We'll see you on the next episode of the Skeptic Metaphysicians. Until then, take care.